Hi, my name is Noah Gift, and today we're going to talk about ruthless data collection and ruthless web scraping. A lot of times when you're trying to do data science, business analytics, or some other data related problem, you want to get a good data set, and it can be confusing as to when do you want to go scrape the data or when do you want to pull a clean data set and how much code should you write. And in this next section here, I'm going to show you how to go very, very quickly and be ruthless about cutting and pasting data, taking it from other sources, combining it all together to create a solution. So with just a little bit of effort, you can immediately become productive and get the data set you need to solve your data science problem. Yeah, so one of the things I think that's a really important concept when you're thinking about data storytelling is the notebook. And in particular, I think one of the better techniques to use is to master some kind of a hosted notebook. And one of the ones that I think is really the best notebook to master is this Jupyter notebook that's hosted on the Google Cloud called Collaboratory. There's a few other notebooks as well. There's also, for example, SageMaker, which is a hosted notebook. Google Vertex AI also has hosted notebooks. But one of the things that's nice about this particular flavor is how deep of an integration it has with with an existing GitHub project. And so for a portfolio or for any kind of a communication with a business leader, this particular type of notebook or hosted notebook I think is really powerful. And so let's talk a little bit about this before we get too much into the specifics of storytelling. What I would recommend here, and just to maybe even review a little bit of some of the stuff we talked about before, is to think about how you can integrate a Jupyter notebook or Colab notebook into a GitHub repo. So let's go here and let's make maybe a data storytelling repo here, Colab, and we can say, this is a repo for telling a story with data. And we can also add a README here, maybe add a get ignore. I think this is a good idea for any project that uses data science to either ignore Python or to ignore R. And the reason for this is that a lot of times when you're building out the initial project, a lot of times there'll be these files that can cause conflicts, or like a .pyc file or other files where you can actually use this get ignore and it gets rid of them. So that's one thing that I would recommend. And then once you've got this thing started here, a couple things to point out is that if you are, let's say, applying for a graduate program or you're applying for a job, that oftentimes they will look at your initial GitHub project here and see what kind of effort you put into it. And in particular, I think a few things to point out here are that you could say like maybe like an overview. Here we go, overview of data science. And then what I like to do that's a neat little trick is if you go here and we say new issue and we go over to images, I like to create a ticket in GitHub, and then I use this to host images that I can both use in Colab, and then I also can use in my README file. And so what I'll do here is I'll take maybe like a screenshot of a new notebook. We can go here and we can say, change the title up here to say data storytelling, something like this, storytelling. And then I could just maybe take a picture of a little bit of this just as an example. And then when this saves to my desktop, what's neat about this is that I can go back to this new issue here, select attach files, and then take this picture and put it in. There we go. And then if you want to clean it up a little bit, you could even name this aspect of the hyperlink, whatever it is that you are documenting. Submit this as an issue, and notice that you get free image hosting, which is kind of neat. And then again, if I'm starting to tell a story in my repo here, you can start to see how actually this is the one I have open. I could put this in there, committed, right? So So this really can be a nice little workflow to build a portfolio or to communicate a message with, let's say, even if you're a Fortune 500 company and you're communicating with another company, you may want to start to build out a notebook that maybe replicates even something that you're working on the product with and showing them some kind of story. And I think it is important to put this all into a tight README file. Now, as I mentioned here, I think this synchronization where you go back and forth is a really powerful feature of this Colab notebook. And so you have code snippets here and you have text snippets. And with the first thing that I like to do is going here, we can just create a first hierarchy, and I'll say, let's say storytelling, and I'll put one hashtag like this, and then I can put another one down here that says two hashtags, ingest, and then I can make another one here that says EDA like this, and then we can do another one here that is about maybe modeling, and then another one is conclusion. There we go, something like this. And again, what's neat about this is if I wanted to, maybe take that existing little snippet here, let's actually grab it, this picture, and then go here and just throw it in and say, this is how you use Colab, or whatever it is I want to document. Put it inside of this, and you can do the same thing, right, that you do with GitHub. And then later, when I look at it from collapse view, right, I can hide all this, and then I can also look at this table of contents, and I can see this kind of timeline here. So I do think this is really important when you're telling a story for data science, is to initially get the structure right. And I personally like this Colab notebook because of, especially if you're building a really large project, you can set a lot of the boilerplate code in the ingestion phase here, where people can hide it or not hide it. It's up to them. But then they can focus on whatever part that you want to tell them. Maybe it's the conclusion. And then later they can give it to their team, and they can verify that you're really looking at the right data, or coming up with the right conclusions. But when you're telling a story, it's really easy to share this information. So what I can do here next here is I can save a copy in GitHub, and let's go ahead and do that. Let's put this into our new repo here, which is Data Storytelling Colab. Go here, Data Storytelling Colab. There you go. And this URL should be visible. There we go. And then here we go. We have a pretty good synchronization. Then if I give this link to somebody else, they can open up. So just wanted to recap some of that, whether we had covered a little bit of this before or not. I think this is just important to set the stage for why it's so important to have some kind of a synchronization with a notebook when you're telling a story. And a big part of it is so that people can reproduce what you did. You can point them into the right direction, and they can even work on the project with you. So that's really, in a nutshell, the purpose for that. And then later, what you may even want to do too is put a little bit of documentation into the README file. And you might even say something like, this is, highlight or how you can use Colab, and then this is the actual notebook, right? And then we go here. Okay, so I like to actually create a hyperlink as well, actual Colab notebook, and I use this syntax where I put brackets around it, and then I put in these things here. Now, a few other things that are interesting to know about with data storytelling is that you're going to somehow need to get some data, right, to do data storytelling. And that can be a little bit challenging. One approach that I think is an interesting approach is that you can actually check the data directly into your repo if it's small enough. And so let's go ahead and find some data that I've got. I'm going to go to a NBA repo that I've got, and this will be NBA Social Power NBA. And inside of here, I have a section called data, and this might be an interesting approach, right? As you could actually store your data in a data directory. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's in order to create a directory structure here, though, what I'll do is I'll need to work with this somehow. And let me show you a neat little feature of GitHub that's available if you purchase the professional account, which I think is an interesting thing to purchase. If you go to code, you can actually work on it without even needing a powerful computer. So if you have the cheapest Chrome notebook, or you have an Android device, or you have I think even a Samsung Note or something like this, you could start writing code by just clicking this button, code space. And this what it'll do. It says limit reached, remove an existing one. Okay, so I'm going to remove. I use these so much that I'm going to need to get rid of one of them. So I'll delete this one, and then I'm going to go back here and go to this data storytelling notebook. There we go. And then I'll go back to this, and there we go. But what I like about this, again, is that where the world is headed with data science, with software engineering, with machine learning, is that your laptop or your workstation is not really that important anymore. And this isn't like in the theory. This is right now. It really doesn't give much value other than, I think, a good monitor is nice and a fast internet connection. But your machine can be very low powered. It doesn't matter, because I think most things now are moving to these web browser based approaches. Now, what's kind of neat about this code space is that a couple things here. One, that if I click on this notebook, I can actually also even work on it inside of here, right? So I could even, do import OS or whatever, right? And I can actually run cells and do things inside of this notebook, which is pretty cool. But the other thing to be really aware of is that why we got in here to begin with is that if I wanted to create a directory, I could go here and say make directory data, and then I could just put an empty file in there, because that will need to do this to check it into Git. We'll say touch data readme.md, and then I could even put a little bit of information in this readme file. Just say these are data sources that I'm using, right? And then I can just say get status. And again, this is great. It's like we've got a full development lifecycle right inside of this GitHub code spaces. I can say get add data storytelling. I guess I made a change to that, and I can say get add data, commit this, adding directory for adding source data. There we go. Perfect. And once I push this, now if we go back over to GitHub, let's go to GitHub real quick, that we should be able to, if I go to Colab, yes, right, Colab, I should be able to see that directory. There we go. So now I can actually start to play around with it. So again, what's really nice is everything I've done now is the Colab notebook is hosted somewhere. The GitHub branch or the GitHub code is hosted inside of GitHub, and then the development environment is actually hosted in code spaces. So really, it's completely web-based so far, and I can start to work on my data storytelling. So what I'm going to do next here is I'm going to look at some data set, and again, I can grab it from anywhere. I could have copied it and pasted it, or I could do anything. I know I have one here that looks like it could be kind of interesting, and so I'm going to click on this data set. And you can do this. You can just find some data set somewhere and download it like this. And if I select this icon, I can either select the permalink, or if I select this raw link, I can just download it. So I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to download this thing. onto my desktop. There we go. And just for fun, I'll go back here, click on this data directory, and say add file, and then upload a file. So I can really just, again, use all of this as a drag and drop. And then here we go. We see this file has got a txt associated with it. And so what I'll do as well is, because the download changed it with a txt, I'm going to rename it. And I'm going to do control E here. I'm going to take that off. There we go. So I just want it to be a CSV file. And then once I do this, I can commit a change. Now that I've got this data, how do I use it with my existing, data storytelling notebook? Well, we can go here and we can just start to import it directly from this notebook. So I can say import pandas as PD. Right, there we go. That works. And this is one of the nice things about this Colab environment is everything's just built directly inside. The libraries are there. You can visualize things inside of there. And so now all I need to do is go to this link here that says raw, and that lets it be viewable. And I could go to this location and create a data frame. So I could say data frame is equal to pd.read CSV, and then put that link in. And then what's neat about this is I can just look at a few rows, right? So this is, I think, a pretty good workflow to just start to play around with data. And it's pretty straightforward. Is you could have maybe spent a little bit of time, either used some scraping software or found a clean data set, or even gone to a website, clicked on how to download the data, and then put it into your project. And then you could start to use it. And what's great is this is completely encapsulated. So if I go back to this environment, let's take a look at this. I can say get status. That's clean. But if I say get pull, it'll pull those new changes, right? And so, oops, there we go. We can even see this file. And look, if I wanted to, I could even kind of take a look at this and even manipulate it from this interface as well. So again, let me just close one of these here. So now that I've got this running here, a couple things that are typically a good idea is that we could go through here and maybe look at some kind of descriptive statistics, which would be df describe, and then from there I could start to do more and more decision making. But again, that's kind of the basic workflow. So just so I don't get too caught up in recreating everything from scratch, I'm going to go ahead and save this in GitHub so that there's a copy of it. And then this will be a nice maybe starter kit to build things. This is data storytelling Colab. There we go. Okay, so let's look at something that's got a little bit more of a fleshed out formula though with it. And in particular, one of the things that I think is a good data storytelling notebook is I have a different one, which is this one, Functional Intro to Python. And I'll put this potentially into a chat here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this this notebook here. And this one has a bunch of interesting stuff in here that I can really tell a story with. So it's kind of the same concept that I was showing before, but the difference is this is a huge project. I'm going to scroll down to maybe this section, and we'll start from here. So this is way down at the bottom here. So let's again talk about a real world data storytelling. This is something I did a while back, and I had spent a lot of time working in sports social media. I was working with Bayern Munich. I was working with Golden State Warriors. I was working with all kinds of sports companies, and we were doing a lot of things around trying to find who's influential on social media. And one of the problems after I had left one company and started doing consulting was, what are the data sources I'm going to need, and how do I find those data sources? And that really can be a problem sometimes, is is trying to find out, what data should I collect, and will it even be useful? And I think this is something to be aware of, is that A, it's very difficult to collect data, and B, the data you collect may or may not even be useful. And so you just have to take a chance. And then sometimes when you go in and you collect the data, it could turn out that it doesn't even matter, right? Like nothing mattered about the data that you collected. And so now what do you do? So in this particular example, one of the things that I was looking into was arena attendance, right? I want to see like, okay, who's actually interested in going to these different sports teams. Another thing that I was looking at was I wanted to look at, essentially who is the most popular, right? So, if I looked at Wikipedia, it's a pretty good signal for who's actually popular, and it's actually free. And it's relatively straightforward to collect data from Wikipedia, and we can talk about that in a second. Also, Twitter, it was a good source of data to find out global engagement. And in particular, one of the things that's interesting about Twitter is that we're seeing this more now, but the relative engagement, so how much people interact frequently to content, is much more of a gauge of someone's influence than potentially just the follower count, because in some cases, actually, the followers are bots, or they're not even real people. And those are all things that you should be aware of when you're building out some kind of reputation engine or trying to figure out who's influential. The other thing that comes up a lot in the United States is the census data just came out, and this can find out things like population density or when people are leaving. And then there's endorsements as well, and brand value, salary, pay for performance, and then NBA data sets like what can you do on the court, right? These are all things that I play around with. So the first thing to take a look at here is that how would we grab some of this Twitter code? And so let's take a look at this. So one of the things that I have here is an example of how you would use this code that I wrote. So what I would do is I would create a data frame, and I would say I want to pull a Twitter user. Now, LeBron James is a pretty famous basketball player, and I could just put his Twitter handle in here, and then the code that I wrote would actually describe a bunch of his tweets, and it would tell me some interesting information about those tweets. So, for example, it would say, how many are we looking at of LeBron James' tweets? In this case, it was 200. And, what is the standard deviation? What's the minimum 25 percentile, 50 percentile? One of the things that we see here is that on average, every single time LeBron James will do a tweet, he gets something like 5,000 people will like it, right? So that's a lot of people interacting with LeBron James every single time he does a tweet. And then if we look at the max, he's had some tweets here where maybe 128,000 people have favorited, and then 70,000 people had shared that retweet with other people. And so he's a very influential person. And just by looking at the numerical information here, we're able to find out a lot of good information. And again, this is just one data source that I use. So if you want to do something like this yourself, here's just some ideas. I wouldn't necessarily say this will be exactly perfect for you, but you could pip install a library like the Twitter library. You'd also have to have your API keys, like these are the config.consumer key, config.consumer secret, config access token, and config access token secret. So you need to have these configured. And then all I did was I just told it the default method here to grab a certain number of tweets. So I said, okay, I want to grab 200 tweets. That looks pretty good. And then I took those tweets and I converted them to a data frame. And so what's neat about that is that, again, it gives me the information that I later can use to get descriptive statistics. Another thing that I did was I then returned the data frame of statistics, and then I have this thing that queries all the different handles, and then I find out things like, give me the median level of engagement, and then I eventually use this, and I put this information into a data set that I later use. In fact, if we look at the raw data, which let's just look at this one, this might be a good way to look at it. I believe if we look towards the end here and we scroll down here, we have that information. So we can look at the salaries of these NBA players. Again, there we go. Twitter favorite column, Twitter account, and then also the retweets. So we can start to look at some things that are very different than traditional data set, but it took me a little bit of work, right? I had to write some code to query it. And so again, this is a link here where you could take a look at this yourself if you wanted to play around with this. But the other one is the second one that I did, and we'll just open this one up real quick, was I wrote some code that would allow me to talk to the publicly available API for Wikipedia. And what's great about this is that it has similar characteristics as, let's say, Twitter, in that the more popular you are, the more people will visit your page, right? And so we can actually access for free. And let's even see if I can recreate this real quick. So I guess if I did this, if I just put this here for a second, and let's just throw that over here. And if I open up another link here, let's try this out. Let's see if we can recreate this. So here's part one, and we'll put this in. Here is part two, and we put this in. And then here is part three. We put this in. And then we have the final part right there. So I basically created this URL, and there you go. I guess that still works. That's kind of neat to know. And so this I believe is going to give us the page views for that particular day for LeBron James. So again, this would work for anybody, right? This would be LeBron James, but if we had another user in Wikipedia, we could grab another user. So I guess we could try that. Let's even change this to today's date. So let's say 2021, and then let's see, we'll do September 8th, 2021, September 8th. And then I think it would be September 8th, and then that would be 03. Does that work? Oh, should be the end. I might have to tweak this a little bit. For some reason that didn't exactly work, but basically we can even, I think there might even be another view where you can actually look at page views per article. Let's see if it'll show us any documentation. Wikipedia API REST. We can just keep taking this off. There we go. So we can see a little bit more information into this. Again, this is a publicly available API. So sometimes at the time that I actually queried this, I had no idea this even existed. I kind of found it and I didn't see any documentation available. So I was kind of just hacking a little bit and just finding this out. But this is pretty neat, page views. This particular API here is called Swagger. And so what's neat about it is that you can also just start putting things inside of this Swagger API. And in fact, why don't we document this a little bit? So I'm gonna take a picture of this, make it a screenshot like that, and then I'm gonna put it back in our documentation that we were working on. Right. So we had this data storytelling notebook, and what I can do, I guess, is maybe let's put this in here. We'll just put a little note that says now Wikipedia has Swagger or something like this, Swagger API docs. And then I could go back to GitHub, go to that project, which was data, data storing Colab. Go back to the issue, go to the images, paste it in, and then we can open this a little bit more, drag this document, and just say Swagger. So sometimes it is a good idea to document things like this so you don't forget. There we go, comment. And then if I go back to this notebook, I could just, I don't know, either put it here like I was just doing, like that. That might be a good spot for it. There we go. And then if I save it, other people can now see my work. So I think this little images hack here is a pretty cool little hack to get access to notes while you're working, and maybe even sharing it with other people. And again, if you hide it, it's not distracting. So what we can do here, though, is if we look at page views per article, here we go, get the most viewed articles for a country. There we go. That's kind of cool. So I could actually say, try it out. And I could say USA. And then we could say year, we'll say 2021. And then for month, we'll say, how about last month? And then for a day, let's say the last day of last month. If we execute it, it gives us this. So it says title not found. Somehow that didn't work. But again, these are the kind of things that you have to do sometimes to start to explore a data set and figure it out. So I'm probably figuring out, I'm messing up something. I don't know why it doesn't. Maybe the ISO is bad. Oh, there we go. Let's use France. Actually, it might be, it's 2 code. So it might be this. Or let's try the one they mentioned. Let's just try France. Execute. That looks like it's doing something. And then it found, there we go. So we can see like these are the top pages now. So again, this is kind of cool because I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to look for this. And then I now found something interesting, right? Is like, oh, what's this? Well, these are the top, players that I could find in France. I'm sorry, top pages. And then I could start to do more interesting analytics with it. So let's maybe even put this documentation in a repo. We could put it either in the notebook or inside of this. We can say, initial research, around Wikipedia page views. There we go, page views and scraping. And what's really neat about this, and we can just say this is top pages in France for 2021 0831, and this is really kind of a cool process of discovering new stuff, because we can then go deeper, right? So even though we found this kind of really cool query, in fact, I like this too, like it gives you a curl command, or it even gives you this exact query. And let me just even take a screenshot of this, because it's kind of a cool little screenshot, and I'll just throw this there. And this just shows, like, again, how cool it is to start to like discover things, right? Like discover data sets, discover ways to grab things. And then if we go through here, we can just do this. This is like, France query or whatever. France query. There we go. Got this comment. Go into here and put it in there. So now that we got that working, let's take a look at this. So this one of them is a football player. Let's see. Oh, there, Cristiano Ronaldo, who is very famous, a soccer player or football player. And so we can, let's go find this. Let's see if we can look at maybe a different metric, which is a person. I don't know if it has the person handy here, but let's see here. I don't think we do. But anyway, you get the gist of this. Is that the main takeaway with this is that it's important to have some time under your belt so you can kind of discover things and find new data. And that's really what I did in this actual notebook here was I went through and I started to just collect things. I just started to collect the data, and I found them from other places. Wikipedia is pretty good because you can discover popularity, and then you can also discover metrics. Twitter is really good as well because you can discover maybe some interesting phrases and things like this. And then you may also want some domain-specific data sets. And one, there's a bunch of different ways to find new data sets. And I showed you can just upload them to your project, which is a great way to use it. But you also could even just cut and paste it. So for example, if I wanted to find attendance, how could I find this? Well, I could say, NBA attendance, and literally just query Google and see, okay, look, we found it right here, but I don't have it in CSV file form. And this is a very common problem that people, every data science program I ever teach, people are like, well, how do I get this? I want to look at this data. Well, one of the ways is you can be kind of crafty about this, and you don't always need to write code to pull the data. And so what you could do, and here we go, here's a good example of this, is look, it doesn't give you the ability to download it, right? It doesn't give you. So what do? Well, we can just basically grab it anyway, right? So we can first grab this, maybe, grab all this and just put it into a file somewhere. In fact, sometimes what I'll do is I'll put it into like a spreadsheet. Let's try that. Let's just go to Sheets and just maybe clean it up. So if we go to this spreadsheet, go here, let's just throw it in there, and okay, that's not bad, right? And now all we need to do is basically clean it up a little bit. And so this is, I think, an unused thing that people don't do enough, is be more spontaneous when you're collecting data. It doesn't always need to be something that you pulled from like a clean data source. Sometimes you have to work a little bit hard and clean it up and use your own like hard work essentially. So what I'm going to do is, let's just call this attendance. I could go here. I think I can call it attendance.csv, and I could just start deleting stuff I don't care about. Like, I don't think I need this. I don't think I need this. And in fact, I could even maybe like, just so things are cleaner, like get rid of home and road or something like that. Like, cause they seem like they're maybe not useful. Like I could just go here, delete that row, right? Delete this thing, cut this row, delete it, or edit, delete this, delete row 2. And then we could even say here, I would say, even if we want to be really lazy, which I do want to be really lazy, I can just do this. I can just delete everything but like a little bit of data. And then I can just clean this up, because I can always come back, right? I can always come back and get it. And so now that I've got all this, that looks pretty good. I could even export this as a CSV. So I could say download as CSV, and this would like strip out all the stuff. And then let's see if I open it back up again, what happens. So let's double click this. I don't want that. But what I could do is I could just say file, new spreadsheet. And then I could say do this, file, and say, let's see, edit. There's an import section here, data, tools, view, import. There we go, import. I can go to upload, select this, and I could go to the last thing I just downloaded. So this is, again, I'm not even writing any code, right? basically detect automatically, import data, and what happens? That's pretty good, right? That's not bad. Like I've got some data, and I could probably get rid of this row, just delete this, or delete this column, and now we even have even, right? We have a whole even data set, so I could pull this even right into Pandas. So we can call this attendance like this .csv, and then from here again, I would delete it. I would download it again. So I would say download, and would say CSV file. Okay, now that I've got that, I'm going to go back to my project here, and I'm just going to upload it, right? So to me, this is something I do all the time. Is I like to be efficient. So I like writing code, but why write code if you don't have to write code? And in this case, I can just do things without writing code, and I can find really awesome data sets. And so here we go. I think this is the one that I'm looking for, which is this. And let's upload it. And then I also can go back to it and just maybe change the name to be like a cleaner name. Like there we go, like this, and there we go. So we can get rid of this stuff, and this should be a good start. And then again, what's cool about this is look how it. Even GitHub now knows it's a very clean data set, right? I cleaned it up, and I didn't write any code to clean it up. Sometimes someone could spend too much time writing code to clean up their data set. And now how do we use this in Colab? Well, I just grab this, and I say data storytelling here, and let's go to ingestion maybe, and let's add a new code cell, and I could just say data frame is equal to pd.read CSV, go like this, and then say df.head, and just see what happens. There you go, right? So I've got a data set, and then I could even go in and I can say, df.describe. And so I already have, we have some interesting information here that we could start to play around with to do new things. So this is probably a good spot to just take maybe like a 15-minute break and come back, and then I'm going to show how we can take this collected data and then start to visualize it so that we can share a story. So